Welcome to Framework, and a sort of a new series that we're going to be taking on this year on the television program The Shield, originating in the year 2002. One of the first big anti-hero television shows ever on television, and kind of a big deal, I would say. I am John Bernhard, one of the hosts of Framework. Al Schwartz is not on this episode. He will be joining us with more Shield later, presumably. But I do have massive friend of the show, Shield aficionado and expert, Chris Prentice. Welcome back to the show, Chris.
Oh, thank you for having me, John. Very excited to be on for this series. Man, this is going to be a blast. I'm giddy over all of this.
Yeah, this show is cool. I don't know if this show really has the reputation that some of the other great golden era television shows do. Last year, of course, you and Al talked about The Sopranos at length.
Yeah,
That's sort of the number one big anti-hero show that started the trend. This came out about the same time.
yeah.
And I don't think it really had the same reputation even then, but it has grown in estimation simply because I think it is by universal acclaim one of the best television show endings ever. That's sort of its number one thing that it has. If you ask anyone about The Shield now, oh yeah, incredible ending.
I think it's known for the ending, but I also think it's very much known for the pilot. I mean, it's
It's a pretty good pilot.
one of the most memorable pilots I think ever. A
Hmm.
pilot that just completely threw everything for a loop once you get to the end of it. And I think there have been shows that have kind of tried to emulate it over the years to try to give you that kind of shocking end of the first episode. But man, I mean, no, none of them have done it as well as the Shield.
Yeah, yeah. As far as statements of intent go, there's very few shows that tell you who they are right away, like The Shield does in that pilot episode. Uh, I this is I don't know. Do you have the sense that this show kind of lives on? Are people rediscovering this or discovering it for the first time anymore? I don't think this is getting watched in the way The Wire is, for example, and it should be. It's really fun. It's a really good show.
It does seem to have, I think, kind of fallen out of public consciousness in maybe the last 10 years. I don't think it gets enough credit. Um,
Uh-huh.
I don't, it seems like when you see people talk of the great all-time shows, it's Sopranos, it's The Wire, it's Breaking Bad, and The Shield is kind of like the stepchild that people were given a lot of praise when it was on. I
Yeah.
don't know if they're as enthused about it now. I my I would say that maybe the last few years kind of maybe how we perceive the police in
Yeah.
reality now, that people really don't want to give credit to a series that makes you kind of like a really awful cop, even though we know how awful he is. I feel like that maybe has kind of made this a harder show for people to say, "Oh yes, I love that one. That was so great." It's maybe been a little bit of a rougher road for the Shield than the other, I'll say, legacy programs of the 2000s.
Maybe, yes, but I mean, in a sense, I feel like that only makes the Shield better. That only benefits the Shield is our new relationship with the police, or just culturally. Like this is about corrupt police. This is about corruption within the police department and why it happens, how it happens. I mean, it's not The Wire. It's not going for docudrama. This is pulp genre. I guess that maybe is part of it too. But The Sopranos is a gangster show at the end of the day. Um, this is it also does start a little bit more genre-y, a little bit more sensational, and then kind of gets the accumulated weight of what its characters have done over the course of the run. And so by the last 3 seasons, it's pure Greek tragedy. It really is fully on prestige television at that point, but it does start kind of a little bit pulpier, a little bit more 90s.
Yeah,
The show came
yeah.
out in 2002. Yeah, I don't want to say sillier because it's not a silly show, but it is maybe it's not aiming for prestige. You know, it's aiming
No,
for thrills.
it
Yeah,
is. I mean, this is, a down
which is
and
no different than
dirty,
Breaking
yeah.
Bad.
Yeah, no, which, yeah, exactly,
Hmm.
and there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's not a dry procedural. It's not the Law& and Orders, or, those types of shows that, you can just watch one on a Sunday afternoon. It's like, who cares what happened before or after it? I mean, this is a
Right.
pretty heavily serialized show, and in fact, that's one of the funner aspects, because this is the first time that I've done a rewatch. Since it ended in
Me
2008.
too.
Yeah, as much
Yeah.
as I loved the show, for whatever reason, I just didn't do a rewatch since then. And this is the first time that I've been going through it again. And it's very interesting, knowing what I know about the end of the series, kind of picking up on little clues
Yeah.
in the early seasons that kind of show you, oh, that's kind of a seed that's being planted, that's going to be growing much more as the series goes on. And just kind of how even from the get-go, Lem was always kind of the reluctant one, always kind of the, I don't know if we should be doing this kind of guy, and how that all basically comes to a head later. So it's interesting to me watching it now, seeing how well they developed all those riffs early on.
Very much so. And it's also like it's fun to see the things that they did not start with the many thoughts towards. You know,
Yeah.
Ronnie. Who knew Ronnie would be an important character after this
Oh,
season?
yes.
But then it just has such a good memory. This show. I mean, I don't want to spend this. We're talking about the first season right now. I don't want to spend talking about like, well,
Right.
you know what happens later.
Sure. Sure.
But it is my first rewatch too, and one I'd been itching to do for a while. So I'm glad this is what we ended up with. Um, it is really cool to see all the seeds that are planted. And you get the sense that some of it they kind of had an idea they were going to pick up on. Some they just did good writing and brought stuff back because it was character. It was something that was true about that guy,
Oh,
or whoever. Yeah.
absolutely. Like, I mean, one of the characters that, I liked him well enough, and I thought he did a great job when I was watching it originally. But I think one of the characters that is even more fascinating on the rewatch is Aceveda. Like, I'm
Oh,
really
he's
into
good.
him. I'm way
Oh
more
yeah.
into him during this watch than I was originally. Originally, it was like, okay, yeah, he's the captain, and he's kind of always in Vic's shit, and he's always, oh, they're always at odds, and it was like, okay, that's fine. But yeah, I'm like fascinated by him starting in this season. I think he's a character that I slept on big time. That I love him in this rewatch.
This is a good Aceveda season too. This is a good
Yes.
active role for him. He is sort of the opposite to Vic in a lot of ways. He's I guess if Vic's the protagonist, he is in some fashion the antagonist, but he's not. He's his own
No.
own protagonist. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
it's but they're at each other's. They're opposed to each other in a direct way this year that I don't think they remain. Fascinating. Okay,
Yeah.
gotta be careful.
But it's like
Oh, you
it's
know what we should do? You know what we should do? We should talk about what this show is for people who are not familiar with it. They may have
sure.
heard it's a cop show. This is a show takes place in the early aughts in South Central Los Angeles, the Farmington district, the most crime-ridden district in all of South Central LA. Really right in the middle of gang culture and corrupt cop culture, LAPD, Rodney King, post Rodney King, Rampart scandal. That's what this is about. It is a version of South Central LA gang wars, kind of like right out of Hieronymus Bosch, like it seems like hell.
Yeah.
The worst neighborhood, and maybe the show posits what the worst neighborhood needs is the worst cop.
Yeah. It's be-
Which
behind
is
every door
yeah.
is it's a den of filth.
Yes,
It's
more pedophiles than you could possibly imagine. Yeah.
Oh yes, every over. Their sex registry offender list has got to be through the roof. Everyone just relocates to Farmington. That's just how it goes.
No,
Yeah,
yeah, they're good to pedophiles there. You
yeah,
got to go to Farmington.
that's the place to be. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wait till you see some of the clubs at night in Farmington. You're gonna love it. Oh
Jesus
god, yeah,
Christ.
yeah.
Yeah. So that worst cop is Michael Chiklis as Vic Mackey. leader of the the strike team.
Yes.
He's a hard charging asshole cop, very much corrupt. We kind of get that. Yeah, he's kind of in on the take, and will break the laws immediately. He's got a crew of guys running with him. They're the strike team, and then you've got an entire department of LAPD, and they have various levels of corruption, various different storylines going on. It is a cop procedural show at its core. Vic is the center, but I think this is probably one of the most underrated ensembles on television too.
Oh yeah.
Really good cast on this, really well written, and it is about the day-to-day workings of the barn, which is the police station in Farmington, where they all live and work and beat the shit out of each other. That's the Shield. So superficially, kind of like other shows on TV, okay, cops, corruption, procedural, check, but this is next level stuff. This has
Yes.
the sort of energy of something like Breaking Bad, or they employ a handheld camera style.
Oh
I don't
yeah.
want to say Bourne-esque because that's wrong and bad, but it is kind of that,
Well,
a little bit of that shaky cam, not in the way that'll mess you up, but like, it's verite. You are there
yeah, it's a
style.
lot. It's shaky cam used to put you in the moment. It's not shaky cam used to make actors look like much better fighters than they really are. It's not. It's a whole
Right.
different stock type of state of shaky cam.
A lot of close-ups, a lot
Oh
of
yes.
grain,
Oh god, yes.
real distinct visual style. It does not look like Blue Bloods.
Oh yeah.
This feels very cinematic, especially for the time.
Now, was
Yeah.
this a show that you were watching right from the start, or
Mm,
how when did you get into it originally?
Great question. No, I did not watch this originally. When it came out first season, I saw the ads and I was like, that's the commish. That's that that's
That's
Daddy-O.
Daddy-O.
Yeah, this is not a badass. This is some try hard bullshit. No, thank you. The Shield. I will not be watching you. I didn't watch it for 3 seasons. And then I'm ashamed to admit this now, but then it's like, ooh, they got Glenn Close, and Entertainment Weekly actually says the Shield's pretty good. Maybe I'll give it a shot. Watch the first episode and was like, oh shit, I had no understanding of who Michael Chiklis was. I was completely wrong about him. And this show is considerably better than I thought. And then I immediately caught up. And then from about then on, season 4 on, I was, watching it the day it came out every single day for the rest of its run. And yeah, that's my backstory. Did you
Okay.
start with it? Hmm.
Not with the first season. When the first season came on, I was still cable deprived, so
Hmm.
I wasn't watching any cable shows back in the early 2000s. And so I remember hearing about it, and I remember even the first season it was getting a lot of publicity and a lot of people kind of saying, "Oh, this is a really great cop show." But like you, I kind of had that, wow, the guy from the commish, he's really doing this. I will say that a couple years before The Shield, he was in an ABC movie of the week about the Three Stooges, where it
I
was
remember that. Yes.
yes, and he played Curly, and he was great. I thought he was great at showing the depression of Curly and all of the angst of Curly. I thought he was quite good at that. But even
I
with
could see him
that,
doing that.
yeah.
How was he with the actual performance of Curly shtick though?
Well, they didn't do a
Like
whole
the
lot of
yuck
it.
yuck yuck. Oh,
I
that's
mean, they
disappointing. Okay,
yeah,
that's
they did a fair amount. It was actually the it was that movie was produced by Mel Gibson, and I guess he's like a Three Stooges super fan.
of
And
course, yes.
yes, so he produced it, and it was basically all kind of the behind the scenes troubles of the Stooges. So they would show parts here and there of them
Hmm.
doing the shtick, and I thought he was fine at that also. But I do remember watching that and thinking, okay, this is this guy's maybe a little more than the commish, but not to any great degree. I mean, he's had kind of an interesting career because his first big break was he played John Belushi in a movie called Wired,
Oh,
which is a
yeah,
terrible movie.
a infamous hit job on John Belushi.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's a terrible
Like,
movie, and the way he describes it is after that movie, he basically had a hard time getting work because it just a lot of people were ticked off about that movie, and even
Yeah,
though
he had friends, Belushi.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yes. And so he kind of had to go on the episodic TV kind of route and do a lot of guest spots. I remember if I don't remember that old show was like Dinner for Five that John Favreau hosted a long, long time ago, where you get like
Oh, sure.
four, and they'd all kind of four different people. I remember watching one that Chickless was on, and he basically told the story that after he did Wired, having such a hard time getting work, but that Burt Reynolds sought him out and knew about the problems he was having, and Burt Reynolds gave him a guest spot on the show that he was doing called BL Striker, which was like the Burt Reynolds Private Eye series of
Oh,
not
no
didn't
memory of
last
that
very
one.
long. Yeah,
Mm,
it
yeah.
was short lived. But
Mhm.
I just remember that story.
Seek out an Evening Shade episode with Michael Chiklis in it, actually. That'd
Oh
probably be
yeah.
fun.
Well, Billy Bob Thornton was great on Evening Shade. He was on there quite a bit.
Evening Shade was underrated. That
Yeah.
next year we'll do Evening Shade.
Oh boy, that'll make my aunt Linda happy. She'll love to listen about the Evening Shade rewatch. That would be great. All the Michael Jeter fans out there, they're gonna just be
He
crowded
was
all
great.
over. Oh, he was hilarious.
Charles Durning was a regular on that.
They
That
had
was
everybody,
Evening Shade
Ossie
was good.
Davis, they had everybody on that show. It was like Bert
Yeah.
just said, "All my old friends, come on, we're gonna go make some easy sitcom money for a few years. Let's go." So good for them. But yeah, so then he was the commish. That was a minor hit, lasted a few seasons, and then Daddy-O, and yeah. But when I saw that he was the star of the show, I kind of was like, I don't know about it. But then when the first season DVDs came out, I had heard so much about it that I was like, all right, this is going to be a blind buy. Let's go ahead. And I even looked it up on my Amazon app. You can look up, even has purchases from 20 years ago. And January of 2003, ordered The Shield season 1, 44.99. So that was the
Yeah,
investment.
right, I remember those. I remember spending $85 on a season of The X-Files at one point.
Yes. Yep, yep, those were the days, but hey, I wanted to watch this show, everybody was talking about it,
Yeah.
and I watched it, and I was like, I was hooked from the get-go. I thought, "Man, this is so good. This is"
Mm.
obviously, this was in the middle of The Sopranos going on, and I was like, "Boy, this is, like, right there with it." I'm just really loving it, and I was still cable deprived through, like, the first 3 seasons, so I would have to wait for the DVDs, but then like you, I started watching it, like, when they actually aired with the Glenn Close season. That was the first time
Mhm.
that I was seeing it week in and week out, and, yeah, wow, it's so that's kinda my history with the show, and like I said, this first
Oh,
season, right from the first episode, I was like, "Oh god, this is so so different than any other cop show that's been on before."
it really grabs you just right away. You're just like, "Ooh, oh,
Oh,
I'm paying attention." I can smell this show.
well, it's just so
Yeah, it's
bleak. I mean, like,
uh-huh.
God, that
Yeah.
scene in the pilot where they find the missing girl, it's like, "Oh my
Jesus.
god." I
Yeah.
mean,
Uh-huh.
it's like, I don't
Uh-huh.
know how many showers you have to take, after watching this show, but, they add up.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, as far as, like I was saying, statements of purpose, obviously, I'm referring to the end of the episode,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I'm also referring to the entire pedophile plot line of the first episode, which is, first off, it's about a pedophile,
Yeah.
which, I guess nowadays, Criminal Minds, even Law and Order, you're getting a lot more pedophile content than you used to. But back at the time, it felt incredibly harsh. It was just like,
Yes.
oof, whoa, okay, we're really getting into this. And you've got your characters, Claudette and Dutch, sort of ostensible, a little more familiar, like television cops who are kind of going through the interrogation. Is like, okay, well, we're allowed to do this, we're allowed to do this, and then they get to the guy who's not breaking, the guy who is an obvious creep who they cannot touch, and then they just send Vic Mackey into the room and is like, oh, I guess you're the bad cop. And he has that line, one of the
Yes.
most famous lines of the show, probably: good
Yeah.
cop and bad cop left town for the day. I'm a different kind of cop.
That's
And
right.
he is.
That's
He sure
yes.
fucking is. Yeah.
With with a phone book in
Mhm.
hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great iconic television.
Can't even find a phone book now. How do these cops get any information out of anybody? There's nothing.
Yeah, it is some of that old analog stuff in this too. That's kind of fun. Like
Yeah.
one of those
Oh,
shows that couldn't exist with smartphones. Yeah,
no, no, it is
not
funny. I
in
mean,
its
yeah,
form anyway. Mhm.
between going back, last year through Sopranos and now going through Shield, it's like the amount of flip phones. I mean, it's just everywhere, and there's like in fact, I feel like the Shield. I will jump just real quick to a later season. There's a moment involving a pick on a phone, and it's like that maybe was maybe one of the first times that a cell phone pick became kind of a big storyline in a show. I feel like they were almost like way ahead of the curve of let's take a pic with a cell phone. It's like, man, this show is on the cutting edge.
I mean, it is though.
It
Well, it
is.
was at the time.
Was.
It
Oh
really
yes,
is
of
kind of just
course.
like it feels very modern, very of its time. This feels like new TV. Like it's the golden age. It's like all of a sudden TV can be like movies. It can be more adult. It can be very R rated. It can be anything it needs to be. And it's a show that it's serialization as serialization is really taking off. This is people kind of seeing what you can get away with the genre,
Yeah.
or not with genre, with the medium. To
Yes.
like let's take advantage of the fact that we have multiple hours to tell this story. Let's set stuff up and pay it off. Just in the season long stories. Just the Gilroy plot line. He ends up being sort of the main antagonist of this season by the end. That's all placed through the season very carefully.
Yes. Oh, for sure.
And obviously, people are doing this. Buffy the Vampire Slayer is out doing this stuff at this time, but you can really see them kind of figuring it out. What you can achieve with television, with its what would be perceived as limitations, and make them strengths. This is golden age,
Yeah.
formative stuff. A lot of things came from this. A lot of things feel like the Shield. Probably more than anything, Breaking Bad, right? Watching
Yeah.
this now, I'm kind of like Breaking Bad took a lot more cues from this than I realized.
Yes. Yeah. Breaking
Um,
Bad is pretty much taking the template of the Shield and just kind of crafting it into the world of drug dealing.
hmm I mean,
But
I guess Sons of Anarchy and the other Kurt Sutter kind of stuff is sort of like the spiritual sequels in a way, but
yeah,
Breaking Bad is the closest in quality and also just in form and content.
yeah, like Sons of Anarchy,
hmm
it technically it's like it took place in the same universe because they would
Right.
mention gangs that were mentioned in the Shield. So I remember that was kind of a big thing early on in Sons of Anarchy. Oh,
Los
oh,
Mags, yeah.
they mentioned them, and then they basically had everybody from the Shield on there at some point in some capacity.
Right.
They would,
They all guest starred. Yeah.
yes, not Michael Jace for reasons people can look up on Wikipedia, but he he did not make an appearance on
No.
Sons of Anarchy. He had other things going on, but yeah, pretty much everybody else
Well,
at
we'll
some point.
we'll get back to him. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes watching him on this show a whole weird experience,
hmm
but it's interesting.
Yeah. Who would have guessed the most evil person on screen was Julian?
The
Uh,
yes, the one who well, his whole
mhm.
storyline is very strange, very odd. But
Yeah.
it's I don't know. That's one that doesn't quite hold up so well. Luckily, it's kind of
No.
a minor storyline. It's not a real major in the overall grand scheme of the show. I don't to
I
me.
I think season one is the most Julian you get, probably.
Yes,
Like
yes,
he gets downgraded pretty quick after this season.
yeah.
And with reason. His story's basically done after this.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. It's
I
like
mean,
I
he had
mean,
one thing and then yeah.
yeah. Once he once he kind of I guess, ends his conflict within himself, and you just don't really hear about it anymore, and he's just kind of relegated to the background.
Mhm.
But it's very odd watching him during this rewatch. It's very strange.
He's he's an interesting actor. He has a
Yeah.
very strange affect that
Y-
makes it, like it's not the kind of character you would think or actor you'd think to cast in that role.
No.
Um okay, yeah, let's just talk about Julian now. Let's just deal
Yeah.
with him.
Okay.
Yeah, this because he is a major part of this season.
Oh, for sure.
And yeah, they downplay him afterwards. Yeah, he's a closeted gay man, heavily Christian, heavily religious. who is coming into the rookie in the
Yeah.
barn, and his big plot line is, aside from dealing with those massive contradictions, is he sees the strike team stealing cocaine,
Yeah.
or what is it? Is it heroin? It's illicit substances,
Yeah.
and then decides to inform on it because of his Christian upbringing and his internal guilt. So he will become, a informant to IAD and to Aceveda to get Vic arrested. And Vic, of course, figures this out and blackmails him with his homosexuality. And
Yeah.
that's his plot line. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Uh, yeah.
yeah. So I mean,
Gets
it's
to a place of being suicidal. It's pretty intense shit, actually.
well, it's a very intense scene when he's
Yeah.
basically telling the guy to shoot him. That's a very
Yeah.
intense scene later on in the season when he's, got one of his suspect who he's been chasing, who's armed, and he's just basically saying, "Shoot me, shoot me," and that's a heavy scene right there. That's
Yeah.
that is
Hmm.
a good piece of acting.
Yeah. Effective shit. Uh huh.
Yeah,
I think he is very good actor, actually. That
I do
affect
too.
makes him very. It's sort of like there's sometimes feels like a flatness, but it's so unique. Like
Yeah,
he's not like other characters. He feels like a real person.
yeah.
And this show, for having such big, broad characters, does a very strong job of making them feel naturalistic and real.
They
Yeah.
have kind of a fun one of the rare funny moments kind of involving Julian where Vic offers him some Laker tickets and
Oh yeah.
Julian says, this is early 2000s Kobe Shaq era Lakers, and Julian proclaims, "Oh, I'm a Clippers fan." I feel like that summed him up perfectly right there. Like that was like all we really need to know about who Julian is, and he's kind of in his own world. He's got a lot of demons if he's pledging his
Mhm.
allegiance to the Clippers.
This is after Vic has already blackmailed him,
Yeah.
with his homosexuality, and then he becomes. I think this is some of the creepiest shit Vic does all season. Is when he's trying to be friendly to somebody
Oh
he
yeah.
wants on his side,
Yeah.
like
He's a
the
master at that.
manipulative asshole. Like it's so like low key threatening. It's
Mhm.
so great. He does it to Dutch a few times too. He's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. We're on the same side, right? Hey, I got your back, Dutch boy. You know that. And you're just like, oh, that is uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, it's
It's
amazing. Like Vic is just one of those characters that it seems like nobody likes, but everyone is still they're charmed by him if he can just kind of flash a smile or just be in any
Mhm.
way sympathetic to them. It's like that he kind of has them always when he does that. It's like everyone hates him, but he can win over everybody with his charm.
Oh, he's magnetic. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like, this is the role of Chickless's career for
Oh, for sure.
sure.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and that's what's so striking is to come in thinking of Daddy-O and be like, oh shit, he's got this down. He has the dark charisma of this guy. Just it is pouring out of him. You can't look at anyone else when he's on screen, and it is the sort of thing where everyone knows he's bad. Everyone is scared of the man, but when you're actually in his presence, what are you going to do? Nothing. He's a force of nature, and that's sort of how he gets away with shit. He's not the smartest guy exactly. He's pretty clever, but like, you know,
Right.
most of his success is just the strength of his personality.
Yeah. Well, I think that
Yeah.
that's one of
Yeah.
the interesting things watching this first season with seeing Claudette and how basically her
Mm,
tact in the first
mm.
season is okay, I know what Vic is about. Vic is Vic. I do my job, he's gonna do his thing, and that's just the world. That's just how it works in this police force. And I it's interesting seeing her in this first season, how she handles Vic to how it becomes later on in the seasons.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I'm very excited to kind of watch the Claudette Wims arc, CCH Pounder's role.
Yeah.
I tend to remember her being one of the highlights of the show, but not a lot of what she does, like what they actually write for her. I mean, she's so good, but she's one of the. It seems like she's just a bit more normal of a person than everyone else on the show, so
Yeah.
they tend to struggle giving her specific plots, but they do kind of like understand she's a genius actor, and this is still one of the best roles she's ever had.
Yeah, it's like they give her a lot of
Hmm.
stuff, like when, her father comes to visit and it's kinda goes into some of the
Well, that's like normal shit compared to
Yeah,
like everyone
like
else. It's like,
that's kind but it's kinda weird because it's like they don't really
yeah.
do this that much on The Shield where it's like, "Oh, dad's here. Oh, okay." It's like
Yeah.
that's
Mhm.
more Blue Bloods kinda stuff right there, so it's
Yes.
kinda
Mhm.
interesting that they would do that, but, yeah, she is just great on the show. I mean, she's just a phenomenal actress, and, I mean, I think obviously as the series goes on, I think a lot of the scenes between her and Chickless are fantastic. But in this first season, I kind of enjoy seeing how it's like, well, you know what? I know what's going on. I keep my head down. I close my cases. Vic has
Mhm.
his place. When it's needed, we will go that route. But for right now, I'm just keep my head down and I'm just doing my thing.
Yeah, she has there's some clunky exposition that the actors really pull off in season 1, and she has, like, early on, a little mini monologue about, like, well, Vic gives people what they want.
Yeah,
People
yeah,
want to hear that the cops busted some a pedophile meth dealer. They want to hear that when they get home, and Vic provides that one way or the other. So no one's going to touch Vic because he's doing things that are in everyone's interest.
yeah,
Which is sort
exactly.
of, it explains how this whole thing works basically. But she sells it. She makes it. You understand viscerally when CCH Pounder tells you.
Yeah, I think just the
Mhm.
combination of her and Jay Carnes, they just work so great together. They're,
Mm,
it's again, these are archetypes that we've seen on cop shows a million times between the
mhm.
detectives who come to the crime scene and they have their banter. I mean, we've seen it thousands of times, but
Well,
this is maybe
yes.
the best we've ever seen it, in my opinion, where
Mm.
everything, even though we've seen it, it seems completely new and fresh in this show.
Yeah, I mean, I think Claudette is very much out of a CSI. Like you could take that character and literally
Yeah.
put her in any
Oh, I think
CSI
you
and
could
she
do
would
that
fit right
with
in.
Dutch too.
Well, Dutch Dutch definitely has a bit of a David Caruso kind of like he'll do the thing where he comes to the crime scene and says, takes off the sunglasses and says a joke. That's very Dutch. But what's cool about Dutch is that it will be awkward and make people uncomfortable when he does that.
Right, right.
I think that's the what I really like about him is that he is such a dork. That he is
Yeah, of
basically
course.
John Arbuckle from Garfield in this world. Like,
Yeah,
he is awkward and weird and shitty with women, and he's got like a serious nice guy complex, and yeah, I mean, as the show goes on, they play with that a bit. I think ultimately the show comes like down on no. Dutch is ultimately a good man. I think, but he
ultimately,
creeps you out.
despite some creepy, I think
Yeah,
maybe
he's got that cat moment later, but
yes,
yeah.
that's what I was thinking. But I think maybe the funniest moment this season was, kind of early on in the episodes. They're kind of establishing that maybe he's got a thing for Danny, and Danny and
Maybe,
him.
yeah.
Well, yeah, that yeah, and Danny and she would like some help in taking the what is like the lieutenant's exam or the sergeant's exam, and he
Yeah.
agrees to. But then there's the reveal in the I think that was the one of the earlier episodes, the reveal that she's basically sleeping with Vic, and Dutch witnesses Vic come into her front door, and the episode just ends with Dutch just going, "You got to be shitting me," and just cut to credits. I think that's probably the funniest moment to me during the whole season. I thought that was just hilarious.
You can't blame Danny though. If you got a choice between Vic and Dutch, I mean, come on. Like,
Well,
I know he's a bad guy,
yeah,
but I mean,
she would wise up though, eventually. But
sure,
yeah,
yeah.
early on, that was
Mhm.
that to me, I had forgotten that moment where I remember obviously that she had slept with Vic and they kind of had an affair early on. I did not remember the one episode ending with Dutch seeing it and just his
Mhm.
response and his line. That I was on the floor when I saw that again. That was hysterical.
Yeah. I mean, it is a pretty consistent theme of Dutch not quite getting laid on this show. It's
But it's
a
funny
very
though,
funny.
they do give him a girlfriend at
They
towards
do,
the
yes.
end of the
Mhm.
season, and it's like they're kind of like trying to establish that he's going to be in this healthy relationship, and then it's just kind of dropped after like 2 episodes, and it's like people don't want to
Mhm.
see Dutch in a happy relationship. That's not what anybody wants. They want to see him frustrated and just that's what they want. They nobody wants to see Dutch in a happy relationship.
Yeah, it's a very it's a very what's the word? I don't humble performance. Not it's not no, that's not the it's brave
Thankless,
maybe. I
thankless.
thankless, sure. Yeah, like he allows him Jay Carnes, a great actor and
Yeah,
like a really strong aspect of this show, really allows himself to look like an imbecile and
yeah,
a yeah, like a look like shit, basically all the time. Look, sexually awkward, like nobody's business. It's and again, it's another actor who's giving who's got the great role of his career in The
yeah.
Shield.
Well,
That's a
it's
guy who plays cops and agents like for like ever
forever.
since the show's ended, nonstop.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this
Um,
is the one. This is the role that really defines him. I feel like,
oh, definitely,
and
definitely.
mhm.
I've seen him pop up and stuff. I feel like I say that about all the people on the Shield. It's like I see them pop up and
Yeah, they
stuff,
do. They do.
but it's
Yeah.
like they no none of these guys, none of this cast, I think, has really had, except for Walt Goggins. He's
Well,
the
oh
one
yeah,
exception. The one
he's
exception.
the guy. He's the
But
guy. Yeah.
everybody else, I feel like this was their best work.
Yeah.
And there doesn't mean that they're not good in things. They're still, very good actors, all of them. But this was pretty much the money moment for all of them except for Goggins.
hmm And no shame in that, man. I mean,
No,
this is excellently written. This is
no,
like
there's just not
one
many
of the great
shows like
shows. Yeah.
this. I mean, you can
Yeah.
that's going to be true of Breaking Bad too. I mean, Bryan Cranston's a great actor. You see him and stuff, and he's great. He's never going to get something as good as Breaking Bad. It's just not going to happen.
hmm No, of course not. I mean,
No,
yeah, those don't come along
no,
generally. And nor does Vic Mackey's come along.
right.
That it's a defining role, and yeah, hey, not many actors get roles like that in their career. So, and hey, and I'm sure he got a lot of money for playing the Thing afterwards too. So, yeah,
Oh yeah, no,
good for
this
Douglas.
opened a lot of doors for him. I mean, he's
hmm
had a lot of shows since The Shield. Um,
Yeah, No Ordinary Family, of course.
oh boy,
Yes.
who can forget? Who can forget? There was also Vegas with him and
Oh,
Dennis
right.
Quaid.
hmm
Yeah, so I mean, and then he was on that with that Gotham. Was it just called Gotham? That one
Was he on
that
Gotham? I gave up on
yes.
Gotham pretty quick.
I
Yeah.
never
Uh-huh.
watched it, but I know he was like the commissioner before Gordon was
Mm.
the commissioner, and so
Oh,
that
that's right.
was
He was on Gotham. I
yeah,
saw him on Gotham. Uh-huh.
yeah.
He's on
I
I believe he's on American Horror Story and a lot of the Ryan Murphy stuff. He's
yep.
yeah, obviously he's still working.
He's
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 a household
all
name. Yeah.
definitely, yeah. But it's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, he's
But thick.
finding something else that's going to be like Vic Mackey is going to be very very difficult. But I
Mm-hmm.
hope he tries anyway.
Yeah. Well, sure. Yeah. So I don't know. I guess we're talking about the characters here. Let's we gotta hit on Aceveda, and we'll
Yes.
save Shane for last. Aceveda, great, great character, great. Like you were saying, Benito Martinez really strong here. I really like what they do with this guy. I think as the show goes on, he kind of takes a back seat as he must narratively.
Right.
But
Yeah. Once he's
yeah,
on the city council, it's a little
hmm
tougher to make him, a big part of the show. I mean, I'm glad he's still there. But
yeah,
it's these early seasons that I've been watching now. He's the one who's really been impressing me. Because he's got his character has to go through a lot, and there's a lot of,
yeah,
it's like he comes off like, oh, I want to clean this up, I want to make a difference, but it's all for political gain. It's like
hmm
he some people go corrupt because of money, some people go corrupt for all kinds of things. He's corrupt because he just wants more power. And it's like, as much as he likes to throw it out there that he's a man of the people and that he's here to clean everything up, ultimately he's just got his eyes on the city council, and then after that I
hmm
would think mayor. But that's his whole character. But I mean, that's like I said earlier, watching these early seasons, that's the character that's really been jumping out at me the most because yeah, Benito Martinez is just he's outstanding in this.
Yeah, so well cast. This is such a good
Yes.
piece of casting, and it's also like, I mean, I do note that they are kind of drawing a line between him and Vic, which is like they both think they're doing the right thing, but it's entirely for personal kind of reasons. Like you can see, like, like, okay, they neither of them are really, they both are selfish at heart.
Right. They both want to clean up the streets. They both want to get the
Mm-hmm.
bad guy, but Vic wants to do it and also line his pockets, and Acevedo wants to do it and just get more power. So, they're
Mm-hmm.
after this they're after the same end goal. They just, what
For
they're
bad reasons.
exactly. It's
Yeah.
just different bad reasons that they're going about doing it.
I mean, I would say that, like, it's kind of a thing where, like, Vic is doing the wrong things for the wrong reasons, and Aceveda is doing the right things for the wrong reasons. So kind of a little bit more on Aceveda's side.
Yeah.
Just
Oh
like,
yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah, okay, his
Aceveda.
goals are selfish, but it's still like he wants things to be better because it helps him personally. It
Right.
doesn't seem
Yeah.
like Vic gives a shit about cleaning up the streets. Not really,
He's not
Yeah.
going to quite the extremes that Vic does, though there are times where he's goes to some pretty extreme places, just not
Hmm.
to the level of Vic. It's a lower
I mean,
level, but yeah.
there is also an element of he's not going to get his hands dirty in that way. Like
Right.
he does not have that in him, and who very few people would really,
Sure.
like, yeah, that's sort of maybe the defining characteristic of the strike team is that they'll do it,
Oh,
they'll
of
do it
course.
whatever it takes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And yeah, I mean, that's well, that's kind of true of I don't know, at this point Lem and Ronnie are like innocents at this point. They're barely character. Ronnie is not a character.
Right.
uh
He's
Lemansky is,
Ronnie's just happy to be there.
mhm.
He's clearly the Ringo
Yeah.
um, of
Yeah.
of the team. It's like, hey, just I mean, he's another character that I'm enjoying much more early on in these seasons. I think he actually has kind of low key a lot of the funniest stuff on the show. But not so much this first season. Like I feel like in the first season, the there was maybe some budget issues because there's not a lot of episodes where all four of them are together. It's like in the
Yeah.
pilot they are, and there's a couple times, but it's like sometimes it's Vic is a lot with Lem and there's no Shane, or it's Vic is with a lot with Shane and there's no Lem and Ronnie. And I feel like maybe there were some budget issues where it's like, well, we can't really afford to have all you guys in every one of these episodes. And then as the series went on and it became more of a hit, it was like, okay, well now we can have everybody along for the ride.
I mean, Lem is, almost like one. I think I'm only really noting him and Ronnie because I know how important they are later at this point. Like there's an episode that kind of is Lem heavy. It's one of the lesser episodes of the season.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
kind of like the West
It's-
Side Story Shield episode,
Yes.
kind of. It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's like it's like they're trying to kind of give him an episode so that we sort of
Mhm.
know that it's basically to show that he's got a good heart and that even though he is with these bad cops, he has some integrity and he's not
Mhm.
he's dirty. He's in it with these guys, but it's not
Not
quite
as dirty. Yeah.
not as
Not
no.
as bad. Yeah.
He's the one guy who still has some decency left in him.
Yeah, I mean that's a thing ultimately. Like it is like I had forgotten that Ronnie and Lem don't know that Vic killed Terry Crowley.
No, I
I
did.
forgot that.
I
But yeah,
did
they don't
remember
know.
that.
They
Yeah,
find
they
out, I believe.
well, it's like
But like,
they sort of
yeah.
take the heat for it because it's basically kind of stated that they didn't clear the room like they should have, and that's why
Right.
so they
Hmm.
kind of take the heat for it, which is kind of a messed up thing. But yeah, it's only Vic and Shane that really know what went on there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's speaking of that, well, no. Let's talk about Danny just for a second. Then we're done with the
Yes.
characters, and we can kind of talk about yeah. Danny Sofer, Catherine Dent. This is the character that grew most for me in rewatch, at least
Okay.
in the first season here.
Okay.
I actually really liked her. I remember kind of being bored with Danny when I first watched it. Now I'm just like, oh no, I totally get her now. She is dealing with some shit all the time.
Yeah.
She feels like a character. She feels like the Nancy Allen character in RoboCop, kind of.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, I can see
she's
that.
really just
Yes.
like kind of somehow has found herself as the one woman amongst this incredibly hyper masculine crew of assholes, and has just sort of figured out how to exist within that by but not really turning into one of them. And yeah, I find her kind of dance between being complicit and remaining a good cop to be one of the more interesting low key things going on this season. How she deals with Julian, how she deals with Vic. It's all interesting to me.
I
Yeah,
feel like
she's
she
processing a lot. Yeah.
I kind of feel like she gets dumped on almost as much on this show as Dutch does. I mean,
Oh
she
yeah,
takes a
hmm
lot of abuse from
she
all
does.
types of characters. I mean, she's
Hmm.
got, I mean, this whole season's full of messed up moments, but she's got one that's a candidate up there is when she's bitten by the HIV positive perp, and so she's I feel like she's constantly dealing with shit, and it's like I didn't really remember
Hmm.
quite as much of all the stuff that she has to go through, and so that has been kind of illuminating watching it now. It's like, it's like I always liked her. I always thought she was a good character, but like watching these now, I'm like, God dang, man, they really shit on her a bunch on this show.
Yes, and she's like every relationship she has. I mean, sometimes more overt, as with like Vic and Dutch. There is, sort of a transactional sexual component to it where
Yeah.
everyone kind of low key wants to fuck her, and that's
Yes.
just something she has to deal with and accept. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of like maybe the one reason she and Julian can get along is he doesn't want that. Like,
Exactly, yeah. Well, she has in the end of the pilot, which I mean that whole montage at the end of the pilot, that's like the most 2002 thing ever with the with the kid
yeah,
with
it
the
is.
kid, but to me in a
Uh-huh.
good way. I just feel like
With
if
the
you have to
Coldplay
sum
song.
up. No, well, it was Kid Rock. It's the Kid Rock song, and it's like if
There
if
is
you
a
had
Coldplay montage at the end.
but the
What
one
do
when they're
you?
actually suiting up, when the strike team is suiting up and they're
Oh,
kinda
Bow
showing
Ba.
all. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, so that's
yeah,
Kid
okay,
Rock, and
yeah. That's
so.
that's that's the first episode. I'm talking about the end of the last episode
Oh,
was
yeah, no,
Coldplay. Yeah.
yeah, I just mean I'm just talking about the pilot now because
Okay. Yeah.
they have everyone remembers all the stuff with the strike team and they kill Terry and that's the big moment. But I do like in that end montage, they have the bit where it's like Danny is getting ready for some kind of a date and she's kind of going through her things and she looks at her she's kind of dressed up like she's going to go out for a night on the town and she's about to put her gun in her purse, but then it's like there's no words, it's just the music, and she decides, I'm going to leave the gun here. She goes to the door, she opens it, looks at the guy. It's like, kind of smiles, whatever, hello. And then she kind of turns around and then she grabs the gun again and goes back out with it with the guy.
Yeah.
That's a great little
Mhm.
moment for her right at the end. It's just that just says a lot about her character without even having any kind of dialogue.
Yeah. Yeah. She's uh she's good. I mean, I think yeah, like we were saying, a little overshadowed by some of the enormous personalities on this show. That but I yeah, in revisiting, I'm just like, yeah, this is cool. You can make a whole show about Danny.
Yeah. Oh, for
She's good.
sure.
But yeah, I mean, maybe better as just a piece of the whole here. I yeah, good. Okay, so I think we've talked about everyone in the major cast with except for Shane. Let's talk about Shane.
Yeah. Well.
Walton fucking Goggins
Oh man.
discovered. This is the
Yeah.
birth of Goggins right
Uh,
here.
Basically,
And
yes. Yes.
wow.
Though
Wow.
it is an interesting little side note. Both him and Kenny Johnson in were in Major League Back to the Minors together. So they were
Oh
Major
my.
League 3.
Well,
Yes, that's an interesting little piece of
okay.
trivia. Both of them together.
Yeah. This era of Goggins, of course you cast him as a baseball player. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
him, I mean he was like he's the character that like I feel like just from the beginning is like the breakout character like where you just know. okay, there's gonna be big stuff with this guy coming on. I mean, this is not a
Mhm.
guy who's gonna be a background player. It's gonna get good with this guy.
I'm really surprised watching it this time to see like what a like he's Jesse Pinkman. He's he's the
Yeah,
he's the sort of the big-hearted idiot. Like
yeah.
the loyal dog that follows Vic around and is kind of like susceptible to his stuff. And obviously, he's a lot less sympathetic than Jesse Pinkman, but it's
Oh,
the
for
same
sure.
energy, the same kind of, I mean, he's got more of a high school bully energy to him, but it's still a high school kid.
Yeah.
He's
Oh, yeah. Well,
he's so compelling, so immediately interesting to watch. I mean, I remember finding Shane very off-putting when I first watched this and was introduced to Walton Goggins, but this not as much this time. This time, I'm just like, bring me more of him.
y
I know he's an asshole and
oh,
sort of a
yeah.
big stupid boob, but
Oh,
man, is
I
he
mean,
compelling? Yeah.
he's a racist. He's horrible to women. I mean, you name it,
Hmm.
he's guilty of it. And but yeah, it's like like you, I kind of look at him. If we're gonna say Vic is the Tony Soprano of the show, I think I look at Shane as the Christopher of the show. That's kind of
Without a
how
doubt.
how
Yeah.
how I
Hmm.
see him, is that he's kind of the monster that Vic is slowly building during the course of this season.
Oh, that's certainly what he becomes
Yeah,
ultimately, and yeah, I mean, he's oh god, it's
but
so
like,
cool to see him young too. It's
yeah.
so great to see like this right at the beginning of it all.
Well,
Walton Goggins,
he has a real different look. I don't There's, like, nobody else that, like, looks like him. Like, I can't think of
hmm
a lot of actors. It's kinda like, "Oh, well, Chickless, he's bald, looks a little like Bruce Willis at times if you look in a certain
hmm
angle." It's like every actor kinda looks like someone else. There's, like, nobody that really looks like Walt Goggins. I mean, he just has his own vibe that nobody can really match.
hmm Man, he is so just openly emotional and vulnerable in this
Yeah.
season too. Like that's another Aaron Paul thing, really. Like the scene when Benito Martinez, Aceveda, pulls him into the interrogation room, to really take a run at him. I mean, I even at the time, I was pretty sure, like, I must have been like, well, they're not gonna, spill the beans here. But man, he really sells like he could. He
Oh, yeah.
really feels like he's about to collapse in the
Well,
interrogation there. It's yeah, like,
Well, there's also, the episode where they quote unquote sort of kidnap the basketball player, which is kind of a silly storyline. And I
I'm
feel like,
not a fan of that one. Yeah.
well, it's kind of a silly storyline. I think it's kind of meant to sort of get you more familiar with, Shane and Lem and Dutch. I mean, and,
hmm
and Ronnie. I mean, it's kind of meant, not Dutch, but it's sort of meant to, like, okay, we're gonna now spend some more time with these guys and see what they're doing. And it's kind of, sort of a hokey episode, but there is that scene
hmm
where Shane and Vic, basically kind of rehash what happened with Terry in that
It's great.
episode.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's like that's a pretty heavy scene for what is kind of a frivolous episode.
Yeah, I think there was a way to get to that scene without retelling the plot of Celtic Pride.
Yeah,
Uh,
I know. It basically,
but
yes, you're right. It's the Shield's take on Celtic Pride. Absolutely, yes.
yeah, it's. I mean that's like first season growing pains to me. That is what
Yeah,
that feels like. It's
that
just like, well, let's try some shit. Okay, that's a little dumb for us. We can't do stuff like that
yeah,
anymore.
it's like,
You know.
you're trying to introduce all these characters, and so you have some of these characters that didn't do a ton in the first couple episodes, and so you have this silly plot line where it's like, all right, now we can give the strike team a little more to do so that they're not just the other guys anymore.
Right. They still are this whole season for the most
Pretty
part.
much,
But
pretty
yeah,
much.
you're getting to know Lem a little bit. Lem is clearly a character that they want you to notice. Ronnie, not so much, but
No,
Lem for
no,
sure.
no.
But I mean, it's a hint of the stupid power fantasy of just like, well, if you were a corrupt cop, you could kidnap a basketball star, and then
Yeah,
you could bet on the results of the game, and it's just like this is
that's
dumb. This is,
yeah,
this
yeah.
is
It's not the. In fact, it actually goes against my my own sports gambling theory is that in basketball, if you hear all of a sudden that a team's star player is out for a game, bet on that same team. It's like the opposite of, because everybody's like, "Oh, I gotta take the other team. I gotta go. Oh, I gotta go load up. There's no Steph Curry for the Warriors. Got to load up on the other team." No, because Vegas, they know all this when they set the lines. So they know how all these everything works. So you got to stick with the team that it does not have the star player. And I'm usually that is sound betting advice.
Well, betting against the odds is usually smart. I mean, right? I mean, you stand to
Yes,
win then. Yeah, and you get one of those, and it really makes up for a lot of misses. I don't know
exactly.
much about betting. I can.
I just say if you're ever in a casino and suddenly you hear that a star player is out, take that same team. That's my advice to the people listening.
Appreciated. Very
Yeah.
good.
Now I gotta ask,
All
because I
right.
mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
we have to spend at least a little bit of time discussing. I mean, I'm sorry to my mom for saying this, but cherry poppers. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah. That's. I feel like. I mean, the pilot is incredible.
yeah,
After that, they're still. It seems like they're finding their feet a little. Cherry poppers. I think it's the sixth episode or something. Halfway through the season, you're just like,
yeah,
here's the show. Here's the show fully formed.
yeah.
It is. I mean, it's as gross as the show gets, probably.
Oh yeah, this is like wow. It's
Uh-huh.
like I remembered this
Mhm.
one being
Yeah,
one of the
it's called
more.
cherry poppers for God's sakes.
Yes, of course. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember, but yeah, watching it again and like
Hmm.
just the scene of all the guys watching the show on stage, it's like, wow, it's like this is going to places that no other show is going at. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. Well, what that is Vic goes. He's out looking for a pedophile and
Yeah.
finds himself in a live pedophile show with a bunch of men coming to watch a well, it's a what is this, a
So
12-year-old performing sex acts
it's yeah,
with an adult on stage, and he
yeah,
just has to watch it.
yeah.
That is, I mean, in the context of a larger pedophile story that is going on all season. And yeah, as a new father,
Oh
I
yeah.
found it. I my jaw dropped for this. 21-year-old television show. I was just like, oh, go, oh, that's a
Yeah.
lot. That's
It's I
I'm deeply uncomfortable watching this right now. Thank God everyone
yeah.
else is asleep. Yeah.
I yeah, I feel like, I mean, I've said this before, but that's another just like that's I mentioned moments that make you wanna take a shower, but it's like this whole episode is just like a constant, just turn the water on, and it's just you're just gonna be, 45 minutes, you better just shower the whole time. It is beyond, really it's as uncomfortable as TV gets. I mean, to me, it's up there with, the stripper murder in, Sopranos. I mean, that's very uncomfortable, but this is, like, right there with it.
Yeah, and they don't catch the guy either. And
No,
they don't solve the crime in that episode. They get him a
no.
few weeks later, but like in that one, they're just like, and the guy gets away.
Yeah, yeah,
I,
yeah.
you know, it's a brutal bit of television and sort of a tone setter. I mean, that is a fastball that the show does not lose. Over,
No.
of course, it's run. Of course, you know, I would say it's maybe a bit more graceful at getting to that place in future episodes. It doesn't quite have to rub your face in it quite that hard. I mean, they probably do a few more times, but like that, that's a oh yeah, oh yeah. I remember season two's got the what's the guy's name? Armadillo.
Armadillo, yes, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a
So
lot of
yeah, they're
heavy stuff with
yeah,
him.
yeah, they'll go there again
Like,
for
do
sure.
do you do you have a choice for the most screwed up moment of the season? Do you have one moment
Oh,
that
I think it's that scene in Cherry Poppers, I
okay,
believe, for
that's
season
yeah.
one. Yeah, I
Ah,
think so.
I
Uh,
I that's certainly a justified candidate. I won't argue with it. To me, for whatever reason, the most messed up scene is more towards the end of the season as an episode Carnivores, where
mm,
Julian and Danny come upon a scene of an elderly Asian couple The woman
That's
is
bad too.
the woman
Yeah.
is already dead. She's gone. The older male is nailed to the floor, and he's screaming, and I don't know what he's saying, but he's screaming, and they do remove his nailed foot from the floor. He sits down. He opens the drawer, grabs a gun, shoots himself in the head, and then the blood flies all over Julian. That to me was the most messed up moment of the scene. For whatever reason, I was just like,
That is an
wow,
upsetting scene.
yeah.
Yeah, that one is you don't feel great about that one.
No, I
It does. I mean, the villains on this show are really something. Like, it is part of the plan is to make Vic sympathetic to
oh
some
yeah,
extent by placing him against demons from hell,
yeah.
basically.
It's
Just
kind
the
of
most
the
evil
it's
characters imaginable that
it's
you
the
need to see him take down. Yeah.
right. It's the Dirty Harry philosophy. It's like
Yeah.
as much as people may hate Dirty Harry's methods, well, you hate Scorpio 10 times more than Dirty Harry, so it's like you look the other way. So it's like there's a
Yeah.
lot of that with the Shield.
I mean, it's quite brilliant, really. It is making you complicit because you're
Yeah,
rooting for Vic to do his thing,
of
and
course.
later seasons will kick your ass over that. But man, in the
No,
moment, you're just like, yeah, we definitely need to get rid of these guys.
yeah,
There's a lot of that. Yeah,
yeah. Go
um,
knock down that door, Vic. It's-
yeah, it's just very good writing. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really good stuff in this first season. The Gilroy plot is decent enough. It's not my favorite. It's okay. It's another corrupt cop, that Vic is squares off against. Fine,
I
good performance.
remember I do
Uh,
remember the first time watching this season, I was definitely kind of stunned when, Gilroy, shoots the gang member, towards the end
yeah,
of the
it was
season.
good.
That was like, "Oh, shit, I did not see that
Mhm.
coming at all." That was, and which it's the same reaction that Vic has, so I guess it completely fits, but, that's one of the moments of the season that definitely, stands out
Mhm.
to me.
Very strong stuff. Yeah, he's good. That guy, John Deal, the
Yeah.
actor playing Gilroy. That's a
Back,
good villain character.
of Miami Vice fame with,
Yeah, yeah, he's
Zito
around.
on.
He's
Yeah,
around. All
he's a
these guys
great.
are good. Are just long TV career guys.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Uh, Dragon Chasers is an episode worth mentioning. That's the one they
Oh,
get the serial killer in, which you're very happy to see. It is
yeah.
Michael Kelly from
Yep.
House of Cards, a bunch of other
Mhm.
stuff. Cool to see him as a young man show up, and it's kind of the big Dutch episode of the season.
Yeah. Yep. That is very
It's got a
strong.
good ending. It's always fun to see the jock give the nerd an attaboy kind of thing.
Yep.
Even as you resent it, you're like, I still enjoyed that. They clap for him. That's cool.
Yes, he for every one moment like that, that's like he gets, well, now you're gonna get 5 moments where you're shit on, but yeah, you do get your one moment of
mhm.
everyone praising you, and I think that's also the same one where they're Connie the prostitute is trying to
Yeah,
kick heroin, and,
it's
yeah,
the Connie episode.
yes,
I'm
and
not a big fan of that plot line either. They kind of write her
well,
out eventually. That's some miserablest shit, and it's also just like I see the strings you're moving to make me Vic sympathetic here, and I don't need that. I mean I get who he is at this
but
point.
it's a
Vic's
strong.
autistic child is a lot more effective, I gotta say.
But it is to me another candidate for most messed up moment when Vic realizes that he's gonna have to beat Connie up to make her story of killing the John believable, that the John would have assaulted her.
I mean there's moments of excess in season one that feel a little ham-fisted, and I think Connie is a lot of those. Uh, that's one of them.
Yeah,
It's definitely messed up, but it's kind of just like it feels like the goal is to be messed up there a little bit. I mean,
yeah. I
I
mean,
don't understand why he has this relationship with her. I don't. Like,
yeah,
I,
they never really. It's like
hmm
it's like, I guess there has always been some theories that her kid was Vic's son, even
and he's just
though,
lying about it. It's never
that
confirmed. That could
yeah,
be.
so because it's
But
that's been a
that kid
theory,
disappears. Yeah.
right? It's like they've never. it's never really anything that's confirmed. That's just kind of one of those sort of fan theories about the show as to why he would have had such a close relationship with her.
So, I mean, he's more pragmatic than that usually.
Mhm.
You know, that's generally my feel, and I don't think you need it because I think they do a very good job of establishing him as a loving family man with backyard cookouts and stuff, and
Yes.
having sort of adult, like dealing with like the stress of getting his special needs child into the right school. I think all that does a much better job of making Vic relatable and sympathetic than any of this Connie shit.
No, I
I
would
think
agree.
it's just sort of extraneous.
Yeah,
And I look, it's okay. It's good, in its way. It just seems a little like growing pains kind of stuff, I think.
yeah, there's always kind of stuff,
Hmm.
especially in the early seasons of these shows when they're kind of finding their footing. And even
Hmm.
though I do love this season overall, there are
It's pretty
certain
good.
flaws.
Yeah.
Oh, it's yeah, yeah. I'm almost kicking myself that I waited this long to rewatch it because it's been as good, if not better, than I remember it.
Oh yeah, I'm psyched to get to this. My memory is this show gets a little better every season, until around season 4 when it gets like much better. That's my memory.
It's like mine was kinda the first 2 seasons were great, and then the middle season's still very good, but maybe not quite with the first 2, and then
That could be.
once it hit
Hmm.
season 5, it just went to a whole it kinda went way beyond even the early seasons. It just
Well,
never slowed down starting with season 5.
Forrest Whitaker is,
He
that's pretty
brought so
serious.
much, yeah. He that
Hmm.
was the addition that is I think
Yeah,
put the show into a whole other level. Though I did like Glenn Close's season too. I mean, that was
that's a very good season.
good.
Anthony
Yeah.
Anderson's really
He's
fun in
great.
it. Yeah,
Yep.
that's a
Yep.
fun time that season.
Michael
That is still a
Pena.
show,
Yeah.
kind of like circling around, waiting to get to the end game. Kind of. Season 3 is a little long winded, if I recall. We'll find
Well,
out because we're gonna watch
yes.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Um.
yeah.
So one thing, like, as we finish out here, there is the one thing that we probably should mention, talk about a little bit, which is I somehow we avoided talking about this the whole episode. The end of the pilot. Um. You
Yeah.
know, uh, Terry Crowley,
Yeah.
actor Reed Diamond, billed early on in the episode. Seems to be a major player for the show.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's in a way,
Hmm.
he's almost kinda set up as, like, one of the stars because it's like, "Oh, this is the
Yeah.
guy who's gonna be undercover, and he's gonna be the one that, eventually exposes this group of cops," and so it's almost like, it's kinda setting him up to be, like, the co-lead, basically.
And then in the final moments of the first season, as Kid Rock's "Bow to Ba" plays on the soundtrack, uh, Michael Chiklis pulls out a gun and shoots him in the head
Yeah.
during a bust,
Mhm.
and he is dead immediately.
Yes.
Fantastic! What a
Ye
moment! What a scene!
Oh,
What
yeah.
what a statement of intent! As I said earlier,
Oh, I mean, it's
this show tells you who he is right away.
yeah, like, if you're just trying to get some buzz going for your show and
Hmm.
you've got 1 hour to hook people, this show does it as good as any other one with that 1 hour. I mean, if you're watching the show and then after that happens and the credits start to roll, if you're basically saying, "Oh, this isn't for me," I don't know what you really want out of a TV show because I mean, that's as good as it gets in terms of just setting the whole tone of the show for the next 7 seasons.
I mean, we talk about the ways they make Vic sympathetic, like, okay, so he's actually is kind of, like
Yeah.
a bulwark against the absolute horrors of Farmington. He is stopping criminals. He is, he is a family man. There's things about him that are relatable and good, but they showed you right away. He is a murderer. He's a
Yes.
bad guy. He is the bad guy. He is an evil man. And you can, I mean, a lot of the fun is, will you justify that? Will you allow this? Will you, like, how long can you be on this guy's side? I don't know if it's even possible to kind of have that experience again, knowing how this show goes and where it ends. And, the incredible memory that this show has. It's all about this moment, this defining moment in the first episode ends up being the most important thing that happens over the course of the whole show. And
Exactly. Yeah.
so it's hard to put myself back in a place where I can be like, am I on Vic's side at this point? Um, but the show is smart. The show will not let you off the hook because it showed you who he was right away.
Right away. Yeah.
It's so good,
It's it's like whatever
Like, I
for
mean,
all
how's
the
the first episode of Breaking Bad ends? Like, he gets his mojo back and he's got a hard dick again. Like, you're
yes.
kind of still on his side. You're like, all right, all right. You show that cancer diagnosis. What for? And this one is like, he's the bad guy.
Oh yeah.
Deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it's it basically sets itself up because this show started very soon after Training Day came out.
of
So it's
course, of course.
I feel kind of like what was established in taking Denzel Washington and making him this very memorable villain cop. I feel like a lot of that is put into Vic, and it's done so well. And again, yeah, right from the get go, we know what this guy is about. And to me, it's like it kind of reminds me of the scene in Training Day where Denzel flips around and shoots Scott Glenn, and it's like that's kind of the moment where you go, oh, this guy, maybe he's just a real hard
Hmm.
ass cop, but he's not really evil. But it's like at that
Yeah,
moment, it's like, okay, now we know what this guy's all about. And it's similar to me with what we see at the end of this pilot.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you mentioned Training Day. That is clearly kind of like this. This is in a sense Training Day
Yeah,
as a
it's
show. I
similar.
mean,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, Training Day was a show with Bill Paxton, of course, as we all
That's
know.
right.
Um,
Yes.
uh, but I mean, in a sense, you could kind of take the entire arc of Training Day and stretch it out over 90 episodes of television, and you would have the Shield. In a sense, I don't mean that to be dismissive. I mean, obviously,
No,
I
I
think
don't
he
either.
did
I
a lot
love
more by
Training
doing
Day.
it as a show. But yeah, that is an obvious touchdown, something they were chasing. But
Yeah, I mean
man,
there was a lot
yeah,
there was a
uh-huh.
lot of those kind of movies around this time. I mean, there was
Oh
Training Day,
sure,
there
Rodney
was
King, Daryl
Narc,
Gates,
there
there's
was Dark
Rampart, there was
Dark
yeah,
Blue. Yeah, there was a lot of it. I mean, and then
it
like
was in the
later
air.
on,
Hmm.
I felt like Street Kings basically was the Shield movie. It was more or
It's trying to
less
be, yeah. It's not.
that
It's nowhere near as good. Yeah.
yeah, I like it. I mean, it's
Eh.
I feel like that's the one that's more than any like definitely is like okay. Whereas the Shield might have been influenced by some stuff. Here is a movie that is like directly influenced by the Shield. I always thought that during the Shield's run, they should have done a movie. Like they couldn't have done it
Mm.
in the later seasons because everything was so fractured. But I felt like they should have had like their movie where it's like almost like the Shield taking on some kind of like a Heat style bank robbery crew, and that would have been like its own separate movie that they could have done in the middle of the show's run. But yeah, that was
Well,
just
this
my own. Yeah.
ensemble could have supported it, no question about that. Like you take these characters and put them in a Heat scenario, it's probably pretty
Yeah.
good.
Oh, I think that
Probably
would
a
have been awesome.
good
I
ass thing to
mean,
watch. Yeah.
I
I mean,
always
they
felt
do
like
things a little bit like that, over the course of the
yeah.
show.
But I mean, it's like
When it's
something
not
that
just
they
doing procedural.
would have spent a little more money on, bring in a somewhat of a name to be like, your head bank robber and just kind of, I
Mm.
feel like if Reno 911 could get a movie, I don't know why the Shield couldn't have gotten a movie. I think like that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I would have watched it.
Oh hell yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what the market was like in 2006 or whatever they would have had to make that.
Well,
Regardless,
yeah.
it
That's
would have
just
been fun, I'm sure.
my own little daydream,
Mhm,
little fantasy of what I
mhm.
wish would have happened. That's all.
Well, we've got a lot more Shield to come.
Oh
We
yeah.
got a lot. Season 2, Money Train. It's coming next.
Yes.
One thing I want to do before we sign off here, though, I want to bring back a tradition from from the Sopranos episodes from last year. Who's the most evil character in this season of the Shield?
Um, yeah, I mean, it's a boring one, but I gotta go Vic just for the pilot. I mean, he's my
I
guy.
yeah, I think I gotta go with the serial killer. I think I gotta go Michael
Okay,
Kelly, the
all right,
the 22 murders
that's a
pedophile
lot.
guy. That
Yes,
guy. I think it's him. Yeah,
that's a fine
Vic is
choice.
in contention though.
Yeah,
This is not a thing where we accumulate like a lot of sins and eventually he becomes the bad guy. No, he's right up there right away.
Yeah, I mean, I think Gilroy is up there certainly since
Sure.
he's kind of the big baddie that goes down at the end of the season. How about Carlos Mencia? How about we say him? How about
He likes his chickens, man. He likes the chickens, though. He cares
anytime
about
I
them.
see
Like,
Carlos Mencia, that's the bad guy of any season of anything. So that's I think
there's
he
some
should be.
crazy guest stars on this show, man. Some
Oh,
really weird
especially
ones.
man, there. I mean, I we'll get into him later, but I mean, I'm right now. I'm in season 3, and there are some people popping up in season 3, and I'm like, I have to like rewind it because it's literally like
Mhm.
like 5 seconds, and I'm like, is
Oh,
that?
sure. It's like,
It is that
is that
guy.
Rebecca Pigeon? Is that where Rebecca Pigeon shows up?
No, no, this is.
That's-
We'll get to it later on.
Okay. Hmm.
Yes, there's some really strange guest appearances of people who just pop up on this show.
All right. Here's another question, though. I add this in. Who's the best character? Who's the most good person on this show? They're all compromised.
Oh,
So I think it's
um,
Claudette by default.
yeah, it's definitely. I mean, Claudette is the one with the least amount of blood on her hands, pretty much
Hmm.
through every season. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Claudette. I
Yeah,
mean,
it might just not be. It might just be Claudette every season. I don't
I mean, it.
know.
I mean, might make some. He might get there at some point.
Hmm.
Maybe
We'll see. We'll see.
in the
Okay.
middle seasons. Lem is doing what he can to kind of atone for what he's done. So he might get that award later on. But for this season, I'll definitely go with Claudette.
All right. Well, I'm satisfied with that. Okay, man. So we're gonna come back. We're gonna talk about more Shield. We're gonna do the second season next, of course.
Oh, can't wait.
I don't know. Any parting thoughts for season one? A great episode, great season of television. Only the start for the Shield. Only a taste of what's to come here.
I mean, it hits the ground running. It
Hmm.
it's 13 episodes that really don't let up. Yeah, there's a couple clunkers here and there, a couple, like we said, the basketball player one, that's kind of a episode. But look, I mean, you're not going to get winners every single week. But I mean, for the most part, it's just 13 episodes of immensely entertaining depravity.
Yes, yes, it is. And if you haven't seen it, you should watch it. It's really
Oh,
fucking good.
well,
Yeah.
that's another thing. It's like, I bought the series on Blu-ray when it came out, and it came out like 5 years ago on Blu-ray. So I bought it. I've still never opened the Blu-ray, even through the whole pandemic. I just didn't. I should
Mm.
have. I just didn't. And it's like, and now, even though we're doing this, I'm watching it on Hulu. It's just like that. That's just how lazy
Nature of
that
the
I
beast, man.
I am
Yeah.
right now. It's like I mean, I know it's got a whole bunch of great special features and interviews and stuff, so I'll watch that at some point. But yeah, it's like I'm just watching it on Hulu. So everyone out there, it's out there. Well,
Yeah,
thank you
you can
so
watch it all on
much.
Hulu. It's what we're both doing, even though we
Mhm.
might own it.
Yep.
All right. And that's it. Signing off. Ba-ba-da-ba-da-ba-ba. Shield. Peace.